Hey everybody, it's Rebecca Johnson of Supergirl Radio, and we are going to be doing our final Supergirl Radio episode / live stream of 2022 this week. Not the final episode of the podcast, just the final episode of this year. So we're going to get started with that here in a little bit, and we'll introduce him officially. But Bill Meeks is joining us for this live stream. As our Katie McGrath Christmas movie consultant for the podcast.
I prefer correspondent, Rebecca.
Correspondent, yes. That's actually the... I was thinking maybe consultant just because then you could advise us on things. But correspondent also works because it just so happens that you seem to join us when Katie McGrath is in a Christmas movie. So
that's it. I never come on unless that's the condition.
That's the only way you come on Supergirl Radio now. We'll have to look into see if she has any other Christmas movies. I don't know of any other Katie McGrath Christmas movies, but we'll have to look into that.
If she doesn't have one, then we just need to write her one, Rebecca.
We should. I think we could do that. Oh, the Christmas movies we could write for Katie McGrath. I see Morgan in backstage. Are you ready to be brought in? Morgan, what would you pitch as a Katie McGrath Christmas movie?
What if we had like a crossover, a Princess for Christmas with buttons?
No.
And it's like there's like an evil twin situation where she's like, wait a minute, and then the evil like buttons lady is like, not the Browns or whatever the name of the prominent family was. That
Brownings or something.
We never circle back around on in any way.
Katie McGrath in the multiverse of madness. I love it.
Yes. Oh my God. All the power makes her go mad.
We've actually pitched something like this before with Katie McGrath, where we tried to get Katie McGrath playing 3 parts on Supergirl. So this is very similar. I see this as a recurring theme for us, that we just want Katie McGrath to play multiple parts. She could play
McGrath Radio, honestly.
I mean, it really should. We should spin off a little segment about that, because she could play a Princess for Christmas Katie McGrath. She could play the Buttons Katie McGrath, and then she would just play Katie McGrath, the book reading actress who just sometimes does things.
So
and
then like they break through the multiverse of Katie McGrath, and then they break through to the real world. And, like, Katie McGrath's like sitting there reading, and she's like, "What?"
Yes,
Katie, we need you. There's no time.
I love
Katie,
this.
there's an orphan I want to bully.
There's a woman in a town devoted to Christmas who hasn't fallen in love yet. Quick,
Katie, quick!
New Rachel says in the chat, I know nothing about this movie, but I'm just here for a good time. Well, you're in for a treat, because I'm sure that is going to happen. So yeah,
I feel like that's the way to experience this movie, is by somebody else watching it for you.
All right, that gives a little tease about our thoughts on Buttons, and we'll get into an official review of the movie here in a little bit. But I guess we should go ahead and get the live stream officially started here, and we'll be right back.
Leslalar's downfall is just that eyebrow twitch that she can't help doing. Could you imagine if Hope was like, let's add that to the PowerPoint? Excuse me?
What year is it?
How old am I? This is how the podcast breaks up.
This is the last episode of Supergirl Radio. You want a Kryptonian? You got one.
Is it a movie about saving Argo? The answer to that one is no. It's called Witch for a Summer! ! Where does she want to go? Ask her. Talk to her. Really commune with flat Supergirl.
Did we set the bar too high or too low?
I think we set the bar real medium.
You're doing an intensely adequate podcast.
Good.
I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love
Not
typing.
mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because her outfit,
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.
Welcome to Supergirl Radio, your source for all things related to the CW Supergirl TV series and the character of Kara Zor-El. My name is Rebecca Johnson.
I'm Morgan Glennon.
And for this episode of the podcast, we are live and wired on the Supergirl Radio Facebook page and the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel to get into the Christmas spirit with a discussion about the film Buttons, A Christmas Tale, starring Katie McGrath. That is why we are discussing this film, is because Katie McGrath, who played Lena Luthor on the CW Supergirl TV series, is in it. So we are going to be talking about it, and we are going to be talking about it with our Katie McGrath Christmas movie correspondent, Bill Meeks. If you will recall, on Supergirl Radio, we previously discussed another Katie McGrath Christmas movie titled A Princess for Christmas. It had several titles. We went with A Princess for Christmas.
Honestly, much like this one.
Yeah, we'll get into that because there's a lot of confusion with Katie McGrath Christmas movies. But we talked about A Princess for Christmas with Bill Meeks. So he is now officially the Supergirl Radio Katie McGrath Christmas movie correspondent. So welcome, Bill. Thank you for coming back to talk about this movie with us.
You know what I always say, Rebecca? Once you find a Katie McGrath Christmas movie that has multiple titles, Bill Meeks will be there.
Yes, I mean, we're checking all the boxes off for these discussions. So that's what we're going to get into. Even if you haven't seen the movie, we will hopefully describe it in detail so that you'll feel like you watched it. And maybe that is the proper way to consume the movie. I don't know. We'll let you
Don't
make
worry.
up your decision.
You don't have to now.
There will be spoilers.
We don't have to.
Yes,
we freed you from that.
So there will be spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, go watch the movie and then come back and watch it. But it might be best to just stay here and hang out with us. It might be a more enjoyable time. But we'll talk about all the good and the bad of Buttons and review it thoroughly, I'm sure. Well, before we get into our film discussion, we need to get to
the news.
So this episode will actually be Supergirl, my God.
Yes.
Supergirl Radio's. Oh, I don't know why I couldn't do the possessive. You know this podcast. It's Supergirl Radio. And this episode will be our last of 2022. But we will return with brand new live streams and audio podcast episodes on January 17th. So 2023. That is next year. But
yes.
Honestly, a month from now. So we're taking off the holiday season. And in that time, I'm going to learn to say the name of our podcast.
that sounds real productive.
No, honestly, I thought I was coming on Supergirl's Radio.
Supergirl's Radio, you know.
Supergirl has a podcast.
You know how she loved that radio.
It was right next to Streaky. It was her favorite object about the size of a bread box.
Yeah, so we are going to be taking about a month off, just to riff, and we.
Oh, Rebecca, I think you're muted.
Yeah, Rebecca, you're muted.
It's weird. I accidentally knocked my microphone cable out, put it back in, reset all the settings within StreamYard, and then it muted me. Why?
Weird.
I don't know why. So strange. But yeah, so we are going to be taking about a month off, but we'll come back a little refreshed after the holidays, and we'll get back into it. So we just wanted to let everybody know why you might not see episodes during the Christmas, New Year's holiday is because we're not making any. So we'll will be back in 2023. I don't know if y'all have been having this here lately, but I've been having to write and type out 2023, and it's weird.
It's weird.
I'm not used to it.
I don't think I care for it.
I just don't write years. It's like a standing policy. That way I never get confused.
Yes. So
you just live in the present.
Present, man. I don't have time for years, months, days. I'm just here and now.
Yeah, so the year is whatever you want it to be. So we will be back next year, starting in January of 2023. Well, that is going to do it for our news section. So I think we should go ahead and get started talking about our latest Katie McGrath Christmas movie that we have all watched. And I made a little intro. I thought it'd be fun to put us it's a little something, but it's not like Katie McGrath specific. It's just like Christmassy, but hopefully it'll kind of get you in the mood to talk about a Christmas movie. See, it wasn't that much.
I liked it.
It really wasn't that much.
I was headbanging as I was going for a drink, though, and I almost spilled the entire drink all over me. So if that was for Rebecca, it worked.
Okay, good. All right. So I should have warned you that it was 7 seconds long, and then if you had to go somewhere with that, you could have gone and come back. But we are going to be talking about Buttons. We're going to call it Buttons until we discuss the different titles. The one that we settled on for the podcast information is Buttons: A Christmas Tale, but we'll talk about the different titles for this movie. But the IMDb description of Buttons says, quote, follow the heartwarming journey of two orphan girls whose only wish is to find a home for Christmas. With a little help from their guardian angels, played by Dick Van Dyke and Dame Angela Lansbury. I kind of didn't know she was a dame, but that's good to know.
All right.
She should have been, even if she wasn't. They discover miracles can happen when you believe, unquote. Yes,
Is
Bill,
she
sorry.
a dame, or is she like an old-fashioned 1940s? Hey, that's a dame over
She's
there.
a dame. No, I feel like maybe she was damed by the queen, I'm guessing. Is that how that works?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so anymore, but as of a couple months ago.
Hey, it's too soon. Too soon for you. But yes, so this is about guardian angels and orphan girls. That description is pretty accurate, I feel like. This film came out, it was released on December 8th, 2018, and I found out when I was doing a little digging on this movie, because I had a lot of questions and a lot of confusion. So I
have
tried
so
to
many.
So I found out that the proceeds of the box office went towards Kate Winslet's autism charitable organization, the Golden Hat Foundation. So that actually, there's a lot of Kate Winslet connections to this movie, which
that explains some things, honestly.
Yeah. So
that explains a lot of things, I think, to me, maybe.
So that's actually, no matter what you feel about Buttons, no matter what you think about Buttons, money went to a good cause.
Did a little good in this world, Buttons did.
Yeah. So I guess to start us off, just to get us all on the same page about what this movie is. So like Katie McGrath's other Christmas movie, A Princess for Christmas, Buttons seemingly has 3 different titles that I could find. And I guess this is just different in terms of the metadata when they package up these movies to send them to different platforms. But there are different titles for this movie. So I really want to know which one of these, Morgan and Bill, do you like the best? Which one do you think is the most appropriate? So we have Buttons: A Christmas Tale, which is what we went with for Supergirl Radio. Buttons: A Christmas Miracle, or Buttons: A New Musical Film. So I guess we'll start with Bill, since he's the guest and the Katie McGrath Christmas movie correspondent. Which title would you pick if you had to pick a title for Buttons?
Well, I'm gonna cut Buttons: A Christmas Miracle immediately, because there was some kind of miraculous supernatural stuff happening, but there wasn't any extreme miracle that happened in it. Like no one rose from the dead, or
that would have made this movie great.
And a new musical film, one of my notes is saying how old-fashioned of a musical this is, where they're not singing the subtext, they're just singing about an activity that they're doing. So I can't do that. So I think I have to pick Buttons: A Christmas Tale.
Yeah, okay. That's a good choice, and I appreciate your argument for that position. Morgan, what is your choice for the title for Buttons?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we'll talk about this later, but Buttons, a new musical film. For long stretches of the film, forgot it was a musical, so that one's not gonna fly for me. Buttons, a Christmas Miracle. You could make a case for it, but I feel like, listen, what is Buttons? It's a Christmas tale. That's what it is. It ain't trying to be anything fancy. It's not some new musical film.
What's an old musical?
It's just an old Christmas tale.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree with you, Bill, about not having a miracle in it. I do think there is divine intervention that happens with the guardian angel saving Annabelle from the freezing water. So there is a miracle in the film, but it wasn't. I don't know. There's something to be said about how there's a whole tagline for this movie about how believing is the next great adventure or whatever they say, and I don't know that Annabelle really believed in that moment. Did she really earn that miracle? I maybe we're just gonna get into it, but I think you have to have a moment where the character really believes about something to earn that, and she really didn't. She was just kind of dying and drowning, and then the guardian angel saved her. So I don't think that was really the miracle was earned as much. So I guess I would go with Buttons, a Christmas Tale. I think it says what it is. It's set during Christmas. It's a story, and there's a button in there.
There's some buttons.
So I guess
it's literally Angela Lansbury telling a Christmas tale.
True. So yeah, I think Buttons, a Christmas Tale. I think everybody is correct. Maybe that is the best one to justify the title for that film. So yeah, it's Buttons, a Christmas Tale on Amazon. It's Buttons, a Christmas Miracle on YouTube, and then it's Buttons, a new musical film on IMDb. So you can pick whatever title that you want. Really, it's up to you. One thing I also, since we talked about the Princess for Christmas movie posters, I thought maybe we could also talk about the Buttons posters and get a feel for what y'all think about them.
All right, yeah, let's get into this.
All right,
Yeah.
so Bill, I guess we could describe the posters. Morgan, if you would like to tell the audio listeners of the two different versions of the posters, and then we'll talk about which one everybody likes better.
Okay, I'll try to paint a word picture here. So in one of the Buttons posters, the O in Buttons is a button. Now I think that is very clever. Now that is present in the other one, but it's not like a straight on button. It's like a sideways button. It's like a thinker. It's a thinker of a button. Okay, so I just straight out of the gate, I'm giving it to the poster on the left, I guess.
Yes. The one straight on.
Yes, we've got Angela Lansbury in there. We've got oh my gosh, how am I forgetting?
Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke. Oh my god, I was like, how am I forgetting Dick Van Dyke? We've got Dick Van Dyke in his little straw hat. They're both really excited to be like looking down on this family that's hugging, and
both parents eventually die.
Both parents are alive. That's they're kind of leading you in the wrong direction on this poster. Don't get too attached to most of those characters.
And only like a third of the way through the movie too. It's not like they're there and they're gone, basically.
Papa. And there's like some like magical Christmassy background in the background. The other poster, it's a little darker. It's a little more in line with the darkness at the heart of Buttons. Dick Van Dyke is he's smiling, but in a way that's like a little bit scary and like looking down at everybody.
It's not the best picture of him.
It's not the best. Angela, he doesn't have his jaunty straw hat on, so so it's a little bit like, whoa, what's that guy up to? Angela Lansbury, she has her hat, but she's not as mischievous as on the other cover. And then they just have like every person who's in this movie just like very tiny. Like if you squint it, you could kind of see. So there's her dad. He's going to die. There's her mom. She's going to die. Jane, if you squint and kind of look sideways, you can tell that Jane Seymour is in this movie randomly for some reason. And then Katie McGrath is like, really, she's up there. She's up there right by Angela Lansbury where she belongs. And she is looking evil. Like she wants to bully an orphan. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to lead anybody in a direction on which poster is better. I do feel like one poster does give you more of the vibe of this movie.
I like that. I like that case. Bill, which one do you think is a better poster?
Well, it's hard because, like, the one on the left, the one that's just very basic with Dick Van Dyke and Angela Lansbury and the family, it reminds me very much of an old, like, Disney VHS DVD cover.
Yeah.
The one on the right is more like a, I don't know, like a Marvel epic, like Avengers buttons.
We've got them all here.
Which I guess would make Dick Van Dyke Tony Stark and Angela Lansbury Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
Actually, considering that, I'm gonna have to go with the one on the right, the Marvel one.
Yeah, I like the logo and the tagline of the one on the right with all the people, but I have a real big problem of putting every single person on a poster. They don't all need to be there. It's not all about them. And then on the
Rebecca, did you know that believing is the greatest adventure of all?
Well, it says so right on the poster. So now I know. Now I have that information. And also there's like every single person who's in the film, like their names are up on the top. So just in case you didn't know who all those people were in the poster, you could maybe figure it out. It's just too much. I like the like the aesthetic of the blue, and I like the logo of buttons, but it's too much. So I wish I could combine them a little bit, but so I don't really I think they're both terrible. But
yeah, neither one's great. But I will say, like the one on the left, I think is a little bit better. I like it does look like an old VHS set, but it doesn't tell you like it's going to give you the wrong idea of what buttons A Christmas Tale is going to be like.
Yeah,
like
I know
that one looks like a fun jazzy time, and then you're going to get like 10 minutes in, and the first person's going to drop, and you're going to be like, what?
Yeah, it maybe should have just been the Guardian Angels and Annabelle on the poster. Yeah, I think
the one on the left looks kind of like it could be like a family drama about this family and the grandparents or something.
It does look like it. Yeah.
Grandma and grandpa are moving in, you know.
Yeah, so they're not really reflective of what the movie is about. No. I also have questions, and maybe y'all know more about this guy than I do, but everything when you watch the movie and in this poster, everything has Tim Janus on the top of buttons. Tim Janus is the man who directed this movie. Why does he get his name above the movie title? This is his first movie that he ever directed. This is not like Christopher Nolan or like Tim Burton or Zack Snyder or Alfred Hitchcock. Not somebody with visionary status, an auteur filmmaker. It's like his first movie, and he's putting his name above everything.
A giant stage and screen.
No disrespect to the Tim Janus, to this man, but I just don't know how he was able to pull that off. Like, you have Dick Van Dyke, Angela Lansbury, Kate Winslet's associated with this, and this guy, this first-time filmmaker, he's got his name above everything that says buttons. I just don't. Maybe he's somebody I don't know.
Maybe he financed it, and he was like, okay, I put $50,000 or whatever they ended up paying for this.
Oh, maybe,
I want
yeah.
the name on the poster.
Yeah, maybe he gave a lot to Kate Winslet's foundation.
He's like, listen, I bankrolled this film myself. I put in the $300 that it cost to make this thing, and I'm putting my name on lights. Now, I did look him up on Wikipedia, the most trustworthy of sources.
Book of Knowledge, yes.
It does in the Book of Knowledge, and it does say that in 2012 he produced the American Christmas Carol concert for Kate Winslet's Golden Hat Foundation. So, him and KDW go way back. So I wonder if he was just like, what would be great if my name was like right there, and Kate was like loving that.
I just thought it was bold of
It was
Mr. Tim Janis to put his
There-
name on everything.
There are a lot of choices in this
Actually,
movie
this
that I thought were bold.
To be that insistent on putting his name on this thing.
He
I think
he claimed this movie. He
mhm.
said this was my movie that
Good
I
for
made.
him. That's confidence.
All right, so we've made our calls on the title and the poster. I think we're ready to go to marketing. I think we could really sell this poster if we this movie if we had to. So I guess let's get into the content, actually the material behind this cinematic experience that we all had. So the first thing that I wanted to ask you all about is the genre choice for Buttons. Buttons is a new musical film. So I was curious what you thought about the choice to make it a musical. Did it work as a musical? Did it need to be a musical? What are your thoughts, Bill, on that aspect?
While I enjoyed the songs and they were very pleasant, the story by no means hung on them at all. And you could have made it not a musical, but I guess, when you cast Dick Van Dyke in something, he's going to want to sing. He's going to want to dance. He's going to want to maybe have like a couple fun moments with a really, really vibrant co-star like the little girl who played, was it Annabelle, I think?
Yes.
Yeah,
He sang and danced with Annabelle several times.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, and like I said, it's not a traditional musical in the way that traditional musicals are good. It's more of like a showcase musical, sort of like a, I don't know, like what's the one with the bingo hall? I don't know, but you know what I mean, though. It's like one of those like musicals they put on in town for all the 50 and 60-year-olds to go to and listen to all the songs they used to listen to,
Yes, a little dinner theater, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was really confused by like the musical stuff. If my memory serves me, doesn't like start right away,
No.
and then suddenly a baby's dying and someone's singing, and I thought weird choice to begin.
Yes.
The singing,
Uh-huh.
artistic. For sure. And then but I agree with Bill. I don't think that like any of the songs really added much to the movie. And again, I think I said this earlier, I forgot for large stretches of this movie that it was a musical. So each song in its way, it kind of was a new movie musical for me because each song hit me with a wave of surprise. Right. I thought this is a musical. I forgot. Here we are in this.
See, when I went into this, I don't know if I had enough awareness that it was a musical. So when that first song came on, I was like, okay, well, it's not advertised as a musical. Is this the only song in the movie about the baby dying? Oh my God.
Could you imagine?
Just like the entire movie, like just the song about the baby dying, and then no one sings the rest of the movie.
And then no one sings again. Everybody just had sort of like a fever dream at the beginning of the movie and stopped.
The music stops when the baby dies. Yeah, that would be that would be grim. Yeah, I had the same experience. I kind of had remembered that it had musical in one of the titles, but I had forgotten that it was supposed to be a musical. So when he starts singing in that scene, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This is a musical. So and it's weird because they have a couple of songs, and then at some point in the movie, they don't sing anymore for like a long time. Like it just stops
stretch without music at all. And
Yeah, I don't even think there's like a song to close it out.
They have all those worker kids sing, and then they don't sing anymore.
I gotta say, the only banger in this movie was like it child labor really sucks. that song was great. I was like, that's right, power to the people, unionize children.
I would agree. That was probably the best one. It had the most interesting visuals that went along with it as well. Yeah, I think it was kind of strange the way they did it because most musicals that I can think of start off with music. I rewatched Chicago recently, and that one starts off kind of right off the gate with all that jazz. Recently, I've been in an Enchanted mood since Disenchanted came out. Enchanted starts with music. Sound of Music starts with music. So like normally musicals will tell you right out the gate, like This is what you're in for. People are going to be singing and dancing in this thing. And it didn't. And I don't even think it ends with music.
No.
So it's very strange. So my thing was, if you're going to make it a musical, make music more of a priority. But it didn't seem to. So I don't know that it needed to be a musical specifically.
Yeah, it was also a little bit weird to me that like it's a musical. I don't feel like she ever had like an I Want song. Like that's sort of like a hallmark of musicals, right? Is like the main character like sings about like their dream, and she sang about like, yeah, being in a factory is terrible, and she sang like, sometimes I like to smile, but the songs were a little bit like hodgepodge. I didn't really understand why they started happening, why they stopped happening. It was all just like a thing that was happening to me as I watched this movie.
Yeah, generally in a musical, when they're singing, they're supposed to be singing the subtext. In this one, they were singing the text for the most part. The text or something completely unrelated, like one of those Dick Van Dyke songs. It was just like, it had nothing to do with the plot and not even really where the character was. It was just a fun song with dancing and people jumping in and everything, crowd cheering. But why is this in this musical?
Yeah, I mean, it was cute. I'm not going to knock the merit of, the singing and the dancing. The little girl playing Annabelle was really cute with, her interactions with Dick Van Dyke. And they had a good little back and forth. And they had a little Mary Poppins homage with him sort of dancing with this marionette penguin. Like it was cute, but it didn't really further the story and the characters. Because I thought that whole sequence, I kind of remember the lyrics, but not much. But it was kind of talking about like hope and seeing things on the sunnier side of life, that kind of thing. That never becomes a trait of Annabelle. Annabelle is like a really sad kid. Her dad dies. Her mom dies. She hides the little music box that her dad gives her and just like hides it away and never sees it again. She never looks at it again. And then she has to go work in this mill for a while, and she's bullied by these other kids. Like she never looks on the sunnier side of life. And so I don't know why that song is in the movie, because it never does anything to further her character or grow her character in any way. So it's a strange choice, I will say.
Yeah.
In terms, this kind of going along with that. So there was an interesting, a unique, I should say, well, maybe not unique. I guess this has been done before, but I was sort of surprised by the writing structure of this movie. So it's like it's a story within a story. So you have to follow along with who is telling the story and who the story is about. So Bill, I was curious, since you are a writer and you and Morgan are writers. I'm not a writer. But you all are great writers. So I think I'm asking the right people this question. So what did you think about the writing structure and how they were telling the story?
First of all, based on the show docs I received from you all the time, Rebecca, you were definitely a writer.
That's very true.
But no, it was an interesting framing device. But I agree with you, Rebecca, that it was kind of confusing at first. Like I wasn't sure where we were. Like, maybe it was in the direction. Maybe the writing in the script, it was clear that how they were setting things up. But I found myself especially the first 15 or 20 minutes of the movie. Okay, who's the main character here? Wait, what are we paying attention to? What's the conflict going on? And while Angela Lansbury was great and everything, I think throwing her in like that kind of just confused things. It would have been better. If I was writing it, I would have put her in as like a secondary character, kind of like Dick Van Dyke, that would pop in to help Annabelle here or there guide the story along.
Yeah, she, I guess to clarify for people who have not watched the movie, Angela Lansbury is one of the guardian angels. She and Dick Van Dyke help these two little girls. And so Angela Lansbury comes in to kind of a orphanage hospital, something or other.
Hospital, yeah.
Yeah, and starts reading a story, a fairy tale to this little girl. And the Christmas tale is about Annabelle and the horrible life that she has to live up until the point where she almost drowns and stumbles upon a church. So that is kind of Angela Lansbury's part in it. She's the guardian angel telling the story. So Morgan, what were your thoughts on the story structure and how they told it in this movie?
Yeah, I don't know that I had put together, like I had thought too deeply about the fact that she's telling this poor little orphan, the sick little orphan girl, a story in which another poor little orphan girl's life just gets progressively worse and worse. Listen, kid, I know that you think your life is bad, but are you working in a factory? Maybe we should be looking on the silver linings. No, I thought the story, I agree with Bill 100%. I think the story structure is weird. Like it's got a little bit of the Princess Bride type story structure, but in that movie, at least, like the story is always a story. And in this one, like the story comes to present day, spoiler alert, at the end. And it's like, it's me, Buttons. I'm all grown up. I'm ready to adopt another orphan. And I was like, oh, okay, Buttons is here. Great. But so yeah, I don't know that it needed it felt like it added like needless levels of confusion to this movie that I was already pretty confused at. Like there was a sudden singing. Oh, it's a musical. There's like the weird story structure where it's like a story within a story within a story, like a turducken of a tale that we're experiencing. It was like, they say gilding the lily. Like they just needed to take like throw everything out there and then just pull a couple things back. I think it's like the Chanel way of dressing, right? Take a couple accessories off. That's what they needed to do.
Yeah, you brought up the Princess Bride. I think the biggest difference there is that Fred Savage, the little boy, and his grandfather, they are like in the present day in the real world, and they're telling a story of this fictional princess and the Dread Pirate Roberts and all that. That's all like existing within the story. So it's not the same thing. Whereas in Buttons, it's almost the same story in the Christmas Tale as in the story like in the present day. So it gets a little confusing. And I was
also like as you go through, you're like, why is she telling this poor child this story? Like it's not a fun story. It's like, I know that like you're really sick. But this woman, this little kid's mother died from like cotton lung. What? Don't tell a child that. She's already sick. Like, let her just take a nap then.
Well, I guess there was a benefit to telling her that story because in the end, Buttons does get adopted by a great family, and she now has this cushy life with these rich people, and apparently has many, many other adopted brothers and sisters. I guess this family can afford to have 15 children.
They just adopted all the children from the factory mill.
Yeah, so I guess there is the happy ending that a sick child in an orphanage hospital would maybe find comforting, but it is a strange structure. Bill, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, a lot of times I like to think of it, some other people probably have this rule too. I don't know if any of them are successful, but I always say, you never make the audience do more than one or two like logical hops to get a joke or a plot line or anything. In this one, in the first 10 minutes, I had to do like 7 hops and connect them in like the conspiracy board up there. What's going on, man? They did too much. It feels to me like this thing was noted to death. And they were like, well, we need stars in it. So why don't we get Angela Lansbury and Dick Van Dyke? Oh, who could they play? I don't know. Guardian Angels, I guess. Well, how do we get them in the story? Oh, Angela Lansbury could be telling the girl a story like she told Chip a story in Beauty and the Beast. And Dick Van Dyke could dance with her like he did it in everything else. So I can see where they got there, but I think it was a bad decision.
Yeah, and I was curious what y'all's thoughts were on it in terms of the story structure. Is that the movie starts and ends with voiceovers of 2 actors who are not actually in the film. So, Bill, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have any thoughts about the correct usage of voiceovers? Were you confused about who the people were talking? Because I was. So I'm interested in your thoughts on the voiceover usage.
I think using voiceover as a framing device works really, really great. When you don't have another framing device already in the movie, which is Angela reading the story. So it's like, if you're going to do that, sure, but have Angela Lansbury being the one reading the framing device stuff. And I don't know, just so many weird decisions that ended up leaving me as an audience member a little bit confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like I agree with what Bill said. It felt like they were like, you know what, this is going to be a star-studded spectacle. And somebody was like, oh, cool, like we can get like Kate Winslet's going to be in this movie. Well, she said she can't be like in the movie, but we can find a spot for her and then we can put her on the poster. And they're like, oh, cool. And they're like, oh, Robert Redford also said that he'd, give us a voice memo. Sweet, get him in. And it's like every time, again, spoiler alert, but late in the movie, Jane Seymour pops up, and I like literally out loud watching it by myself. Mike would not watch this one with me. Fair. I said, Jane Seymour? It's like, she's barely in the movie. She like, maybe she has like 10 lines. That would be generous. It's probably 5. And it's just like, why is Jane Seymour playing like, lady who sits in church pew? But it's like, we got Jane Seymour. Like, so when you from the outside, you're looking at the cast going, oh, that's a pretty stacked cast. This is probably going to be quite a film. And then you get in, you're like, oh.
Well, remember, everything went to charity, so maybe they were doing it, to contribute to the foundation.
Because I will say, the entire movie, I went, how did they get? And then I would insert a name of a random person who showed up into this movie. How did they get Angela Lansbury in this? How did they get Jane Seymour? How did they even get Katie McGrath in this? And once you said it was for like a charity, I was like, oh, it all snapped together because, they probably got the script and they were like, I don't know. And then they were like, but Katie, wait. First off, you get to bully an orphan. I know that's going to be a plus. And secondly, it's for charity. And Katie was like, all right, get me my black bullying gown.
I like how her character's motivation was, oh, she's going to make us look bad, even though, like, we sent her far, far away where no one's ever going to talk to her ever. Oh,
I know.
Look bad. Let's kill her.
Yeah, before we move on, because I think we should talk about Katie and some of her characters' choices in the movie here. Aaron in the chat says, with how connected it was, it actually felt very separated. I think that's a good way to put that. In terms of the story structure and the way that they told the story. Well, so let's talk about Katie McGrath in this movie, because she pops up as a rich, wicked stepsister, apparently, for the mother of Annabelle. So Annabelle is a little girl, her mother dies, and so Katie McGrath comes into the picture as being the next person to make decisions for Annabelle. So, Bill, what did you think as the Katie McGrath Christmas movie correspondent for Supergirl Radio? What did you think about Katie McGrath and her performance in the movie?
I think that it's amazing that the sets are still standing with how much scenery she chewed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She was like a Disney stepmother, like cranked up to 11 and maybe on methamphetamine or something. Like, seriously, like she was very wicked, and I'll say all the best ways. Like you kind of want in a story like this that's really cheesy anyway, you want a mustache twirly kind of villain. And while she doesn't have a mustache, she definitely had that sort of, air about her.
Yeah, I think she was pretty convincing for the part she was playing. So, Morgan, what did you think? We've talked about Katie McGrath, her acting ability on Supergirl, but it's nice to see her in other projects. So, what did you think about her performance this time around?
Oh, 100% chef's kiss on this. Like, Katie McGrath was the only one aware of like the kind of movie that she was in. I will say that, like, how people were like, they understood the assignment. Mm-hmm. This was Katie McGrath 100%. She was like, got it. got it. I'm gonna chew the scenery. I'm gonna be deliciously evil. She was just having fun with it. Like every scene that Katie McGrath was in, like the movie kind of came to life for me.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, she was an evil character, but she was having so much fun. I was like, anytime that the scene would transition away from Katie, I'd go, no, Katie, come back. Katie, please. Because again, to Bill's point, her storyline didn't make any sense, right? Like, not at all. She was like, her whole driving thing was like, oh, my stepsister is gonna make me look bad, and then who I presume I at first thought was her butler, and later came slowly to the realization that this was likely her husband.
I think so, yes.
And I was like, oh, did not see that coming. That was the big twist for me in the movie.
He seemed to be older than her, so like, it was confusing.
Much older. Nobody at any point said anything that would lead you to believe that he was like the husband, and then you're like, oh, he's the husband. But he goes like, it's not going to be a big deal for us to just like float them in the house, and like that'll keep them out of our hair. And she's like, no, poverty for them. And he's like, I think that's going to make us look quite bad. She's like, nah, it's going to be awesome. And then like later in the movie, she's like, if they see this little orphan child and they know that this orphan child is my niece, it's going to make us look really bad. We have to send her to the factory. And he's like, I don't know that that's the right. She's like, shh, to the factory. And then her whole storyline is about being obsessed with this one family that is fancier than her family. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, that family adopts little Buttons. At no point does evil Katie McGrath come back into the picture.
Yeah, I was waiting. She doesn't get like a comeuppance in any way. What was the point of that character besides saving my sanity as I watched this movie? Because I don't understand. It was just like, oh, we need someone evil to like be the cause of all Buttons' misfortune. And it was a good pal Katie. But then at the end of the movie, there's no comeuppance for her. There's no repercussions for like how she treated her niece. And so it's like her whole storyline about being like really paranoid that this family was going to find out. There's no payoff for that. Yeah, at least Jane Seymour could have like rubbed it in her face or something.
Yeah.
Something.
Jane Seymour could have been like, "We love our little Buttons."
Something like that. Do you think, Morgan, since you were talking about her character, I'm curious about what you think, and Bill, if you have any thoughts, please chime in. But Morgan, do you think that evil Katie McGrath in this movie sent them to the mill knowing that they would probably get sick and die?
Yes. 100%. I think it was part of the calculus. She was like, listen, they can't know that like my stepsister is a poor. So instead of just like floating this like probably very cheap household, I'm going to send them to the mill, and then like, the mill is the factory will do its job, like wink, wink, wink. Because when they first take Annabelle, I guess is her technical name. She's Buttons to me. When they take little Buttons into the new boarding house, there's like a lady like legit straight up dying, and her kids are all around her like mama, and and the lady who's showing them around is like, oh yeah, she's got the old cotton lung, she's not long for this world. And then like it zooms in on the mom and you're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, Katie McGrath's character calls the working ability the gift of self-reliance. So I think it was kind of she wanted to make it seem like she was being charitable to give them a job, but I think probably she knew what she was sending them to. Bill, do you have any thoughts on that?
No.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, I think it is safe to assume, though, she knew about the mill and the inner workings of it. And speaking of Button's name, Morgan, do you want to bring up Aaron's comment about Buttons?
Yeah, Aaron points out her being named Buttons isn't even really revisited more than once when she was being bullied, which is funny because it's the name of the movie.
Yes.
And I expected like way more of like somebody named Buttons in it, to be honest. I feel like I was robbed. And yeah, they call her Buttons because all she can do is sew on buttons. That's her only skill, and she's not very good at it. But they only do it like in like 1 or 2 scenes. I think that's the most that she gets called Buttons. And it's pretty late in the movie.
Bill, Bill, as a writer, how would you have maybe incorporated Buttons as a name or?
Well, I think, maybe whatever solution she found to get out of this situation she was in, if it involved buttons, if she was like,
or like having to sew them so she could use her skill.
Yeah, or like she could make like a fine dress for the not the queen, but whatever that would be in this society. Yeah, that kind of figure. And then she gets whisked away to a better life or something like that. Like, I was because I don't know if I actually picked up that her nickname was Buttons. I thought Buttons was the toy dog.
That would have also made sense.
That could have made some sense, yeah.
Because that was like an emotional connection to her mother that she had.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been meaningful.
So the toy dog, though, was representative of a real dog, right?
Yes, but she doesn't have that dog until she's dead and almost in heaven, is how I interpreted that.
I think she wanted a dog, and her mom was like, we're too poor for a dog, but here's this little like porcelain dog. Gotcha. Porcelain is a great gift for a child. 10 recommend fully. I also thought like that little porcelain dog, that thing was indestructible because the bullies like knock it onto the floor, and I was like, oh no, that thing's gonna shatter. It didn't. I was like, oh, good for that dog. Superior workmanship. And then they stomp on it. Still, the dog is fine.
Yeah, I thought it was destroyed when she stepped on it, but then she gives it back to her later,
and it's completely fine when she gives it back.
Yeah, I was a little confused about the drowning scene because I know this sounds so terrible, but I almost was upset when the guardian angel saves her because like Annabelle's had this terrible life, and then when she's drowning, she has all these flashes of like her mother and her father and like walking this dog on this beautiful sunny day.
Finally, she gets a dog,
and she's like having all these beautiful moments in that moment. And then he takes her out of that. I was like, she was having a good time in this like maybe this moment before she dies or as she's dying. Like, let her have this. She's had a tough life. So it was it was a bittersweet moment for me when the guardian angel saved her life.
So to bring it back to Supergirl just briefly, you would argue for Mongol's like Black Mercy thing. Yeah, go ahead and let them stay on
I mean, that's tough because you want Supergirl to be happy, but I guess that is a fair comparison. And Annabelle's. But maybe if Annabelle died and she went to heaven, she'd have all that stuff. Why would you? That's a whole other thing.
She finally gets a dog.
Finally gets a dog in the afterlife. She gets a dog. But I guess
his name is Dick Van Dyke.
But I guess she's getting to have all of that with the Browning family when they adopt her. She'll finally get to have those things. So I guess it was good that the guardian angel saved her life. But yeah, the Buttons nickname wasn't very prominent. It maybe should have been. It almost could have also been like a nickname her parents gave her or something a little more meaningful than just being bullied that one time in the mill. I think that probably should have stuck around a little more. And I guess we could answer a question for I think it was New Rachel in the chat who asks, does Katie sing? So
I wish.
So Morgan, do you think Katie should have had a moment at some point with her character?
I feel like this movie was definitely missing like a classic Disney villain song, right? Like a Poor Unfortunate Souls. Like I think and Katie would have she would have eaten that up for dinner. She would have served quite a villain song, I think, in this movie.
Yeah, maybe instead of just talking about how she was going to send little Annabelle to the mill, maybe that should have been the song about how she's going to send them. Yeah,
could have been a whole song.
Little girl should work. Little girl should work real hard. Yeah, something really
and that probably could have connected with the kids in the mill, like singing about how horrible it was. Yeah,
like a partial reprise of that somewhere in the
I
love that.
But no, Katie McGrath does not sing in the musical movie. So it's a disappointment for all of us, but that's the way that they went with it. I also, one of the things I wanted to ask y'all about, because this is a Christmas tale. So what did you think about the location, the time period, the setting that we were in terms of a Christmas setting? Did it feel Christmassy enough for you? Bill, what did you think about the Christmas part of A Christmas Tale?
Yeah, well, I mean, for one, it started with, a shooting star in the sky, which is, the classic Christmas tale. But really, the costuming was really solid. The set decoration and the snow and everything really made it feel like Christmas. That being said, did they ever actually say anything about Christmas in the movie at all? Or was that church service at the end Christmas?
I think it was, yeah.
It was supposed to be
yeah.
like a Christmas Eve service, yeah.
But yeah, it felt like for a Christmas movie, there wasn't a whole lot of Christmas in it. There was, positive messaging, Christmas spirit stuff in the way it all turned out, but it didn't really feel very Christmassy to me.
Yeah, Morgan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I felt like it was like a moderately Christmassy. There's like a sprinkle of Christmas on this movie, but I felt like it was going more for like a Dickens, like a very Dickens Christmas. It was like,
oh yeah,
I've read like a lot of they're like, I've read a lot of Dickens, and so now I'm just gonna kind of like AI version throw it into a movie. And we're just gonna see where that leads us, because we have like orphans, he loves those, Christmas, also a thing, and then we get like people being mistreated in a factory. So we've really got all the Dickens greats in here. So I feel like
people.
Yes, terrible rich people. So
Poor people, dead people,
all the things that Dickens loves the most.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like it was Christmassy, but it was really like they read A Christmas Carol and then they were like, oh man, this guy is crazy. And then they read all of his other stuff and they were like, yeah, I want it to be just like all of this.
You know what I thought was really weird was there's this one moment, it's when Angela Lansbury is telling the story, she kind of like focuses in and she's like, rich people have problems too. You really care about the rich people and their problems. I know you're laying there on your deathbed. Rich people have problems too. I thought it was a really bizarre choice.
We should all think about the rich people and what they're going through.
If only we thought more about the rich.
In this story about all these poor paupers working in the mills. There's a lot of winter time in this, but there's also like a sequence about the 4th of July for some reason.
I
was a little confused about some of the setting aspects of this, because I think it was set in America, but there were there were multiple characters who had like British accents. Mm-hmm. And of course, Katie McGrath, you never know which accent she's going to go with.
And she's coming with whatever feels right in the moment.
So I was very confused based on the accents and the characters and what they were doing. And then I was confused about when they were in time, because there was the 4th of July thing and then there was the Christmas thing. And I also, I don't know, I wondered if it was even taking place in America, but I think the 4th of July thing set us in America. So I was having a tough time. I was very confused about the setting and the location and kind of the aesthetics of the trying to visually symbolize where we were and what we were doing and when we were. So I wondered if I was the only person who had issues with that.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty clear. It was set somewhere between the 20s and the 50s and somewhere probably in North America or Eastern Europe. I mean, pretty clear. Yeah.
So are we talking 1820s to 1850s or 1920s to 1950s?
1820s to 1950s.
Okay.
Sometime during that very short time period. Yeah, I also questioned, I was like, the beginning of the movie seems like it's taking place in like the 1950s sometime. But then I was like, but Buttons herself seems like she's from the 1800s. But then at the end of the movie, Buttons is like 20. So it's like, I've got to rethink everything I thought I knew about Buttons.
What was it like in the 1920s and 1930s?
God, the 1920s were
she
wild.
was in the 1950s. They seemed like they were still roughing it in this in the past timeline a little bit.
Yeah, I was like, what? I want to know. I want a detailed timeline of when everything took place in this movie.
I didn't see anybody doing the Charleston.
No.
So
It's like Batman the Animated Series. It's set in a very vague the past.
Yes.
It's timeless. It could be any time.
There's
Except they
houses, but someone had a cell phone in the background. You know, it's
yeah.
every time.
Her dad went out to sea and never came back.
On a ship, we don't know what it looked like.
Yeah, I was like,
it could have had sails. It could have been like engine run. Like we don't have.
Who knows?
When the mom goes to work at what I forget, it was a laundry or something like that. It's like everyone who's working there, their husband died at sea. Why do you keep sending people out to sea?
Why did he go? Why did he have to go? I don't think he had to go.
What's going on at sea?
Job. I was thinking initially when they had the news of the dad dying at sea, because we never saw like him actually dying. I thought maybe it was like a red herring, like he would come back, and then he never did. And I was like, oh, so I guess he really did die. I guess we're gonna stick with that.
Guess he really did die at sea.
I was expecting that to be like the last moment, kind of like the old Pippi Longstocking movie where her dad dies at sea and then comes back in the last part of the last act. That's what I was waiting for, and it never happened. It was just like, no, he's dead.
Well, it kind of made me think of it also because there's this big moment in the scene where he's like, I give you this music box, and when you turn it and crank the music, I'm gonna hear it, and I'm always gonna be with you, and all this kind of stuff. And I thought like the music box and the dad was gonna come back into play in the end, and it never did.
I was gonna say, did that music box ever come back?
It never did. It never did.
Yeah, like 10 minutes later, I think it's even said just in a little piece of dialogue, like, and that she left it. Like,
yeah, she hid it away. And I guess that was to show like Annabelle was not a character, like she'd given up some hope, and so she hid away all that stuff. But I kind of was left thinking, like, what was the point of that?
Well, that's kind of how I felt about, I think it's Angela Lansbury's character, who's like, oh, miracles can only happen when you believe.
Yeah.
And then like little Buttons falls through the ice, and she's like, oh, death, thank you, I come to you. And at no point does she like believe.
She never does.
In anything, really. And then she gets saved. And I thought that she was going to have a moment where she was like, no, like life is worth living. And she was going to try to fight to the surface. And that was like her moment of belief. And instead she was just like, gonna sink like a stone.
Yeah, maybe she could have had a moment where she believed, and then the guardian angel showed up because she believed, and he appeared. Yeah, that was strange.
Because there was also another moment where I was like, "Oh, dude, that's not cool." Where she sits next. She's a little orphan girl now. She's out on the streets. She's got one like ratty shawl and like actually a pretty nice looking piece of bread. And she sits next to Dick Van Dyke, and like the voiceover is like, well, she couldn't see her guardian angel anymore. Like she didn't know it was him because she had stopped believing. And she's like, here, do you want this bread? And he fully knowing that she is like starving to death, and he's been watching her the whole time, and he was like, oh man, that looks like a sick baguette though, I will take that. I yelled
You're
at my
guardian
screen,
angel, you probably don't need to eat.
I yelled at my screen, Dick Van Dyke, you don't need that bread, give her back that bread.
And then as soon as she walks away, he just tosses it. I didn't
He's like, ah. that was a little stale.
Yeah, that girl, for being the main character, she had a complete lack of agency in anything that happened to her. Like she never made an active choice, like throughout the whole thing. Really, it was kind of frustrating at times.
Yeah, it was hard to get to know her as a character. I mean, we spent a lot of time with her, but I felt like I didn't really know Buttons like I wish I had. I actually was kind of more connected to the adult version of Annabelle, because like she had this whole thing where she like, oh, we might be able to adopt this little girl. And I thought the moment at the end when they go in and they meet, I think her name was Emily. I thought that was like a really sweet scene where like she goes in to talk to the little girl with her husband, and that was actually really nice. So I think I connected more with the adult Annabelle, who's on screen for like maybe a total of 4 minutes, maybe, than I did with the little girl, which is unfortunate.
Well, she had more of a complete arc because adult Annabelle, it's like they want a kid, they can't have a kid. Oh, someone like comes and says, "Come get a kid," and they come get a kid, and she gets what she wants. Unlike little girl Annabelle, who just kind of floats and gets beat up by everyone around her except Dick Van Dyke, who she dances with.
Yeah, he does take her bread though. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like I never could get that emotionally attached to the Annabelle character just because I agree that she has no agency. She's just sort of buffeted by the winds of her life. And you don't really get to see much personality as that goes along. It's just she's bummed as anyone would be, but there's not like she's bummed, but also secretly she loves to paint or something. Like there's I think this is one of those stories that really actually could have benefited from like an I Want song. Like what did she want? Like maybe halfway through the movie she's just like, oh, I really want a family, right? And then at the end she finds a family. But I feel like she was just like, I just want to be in a warm location.
She's
not
trying to
working
make
at a factory. That's what I want. But like, which is legit fine. I understand that. She's like, I don't dream of labor. Could you get me out of here?
I have no dream job. I do not dream of labor.
Exactly.
I would have loved if it had opened up with an I Want song where she's like, I want my parents to always be alive.
Yes.
That would have been great.
Poor
Brutal.
Buttons. I was gonna ask y'all a question. So we talked about little Annabelle's family who eventually adopts her at the end. Do we have any thoughts about the Browning family, Jane Seymour and Maxwell Sheffield from The Nanny? Do we have any thoughts? I mean, an all-star cast, really. Bill, do you have any thoughts about the Browning family who adopts little Annabelle?
They were there.
Yeah,
they were. They definitely existed on screen for multiple minutes and did something in the plot. Beyond that, not really. Like, again, it's like you guys were saying earlier. It definitely feels like people called in favors or people were doing like charity work, and even the characters they came into play, like I can't see why an actor of that stature would accept that role unless it was for something like that. Just because did they adopt all of the kids from the sweatshop?
That's what they say at the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they must have been loaded.
It would have been great if like at the end like Buttons was like, and then they adopted everybody from the factory. Honestly,
except for me.
Honestly, it got a little crowded in the house. I begged them not to adopt everybody. I said, it's too many. It's too many, and I like my room by myself. like she becomes like a rich girl, and then it's suddenly like, oh, do we want all of the poors in here?
Given Annabelle's trajectory, I would have expected them to adopt everyone but Buttons.
But Annabelle, they're like, all these kids that you work with are so cute, and she's like, yes, and me too. And they're like, I mean, you're really good at those buttons, though. Don't want to take you away from your bliss.
It would have been funny if like them adopting all those kids and made them lose their fortune, and then the father would have had to go out to sea to get them.
Oh no!
It starts all over again.
Oh, that would have been terrible. Well, what I thought was interesting about what they were trying to do with that family is that they make a mention of the family recently lost the little girl. One of their youngest daughter had recently died. And so I guess that makes room for Annabelle to be adopted and become like a replacement for that younger daughter, which I also thought was a little, I don't know if I want to say like creepy, but it was, I don't know. Did they adopt her just because she was being used as a replacement for their recently deceased daughter? I don't know. I thought that was
Yeah, it was a little weird. I thought that was a little weird too. It felt like there was just like too many storyline threads in this movie, and like they didn't really want to do anything with most of them. Like the Browning family, where they had they had the daughter that died, and so like their heart was ready to adopt little Annabelle, but like we don't really like learn much about the family at all, which is why it was so confusing that like the actors were like name actors. They could have been like stand-ins and you would get the same experience. There was like nothing that Jane Seymour was bringing to, my God, you're so cold. The pathos to it. But I was just like, what's happening? It was very strange. It was like there was too much going on. There was not enough character for all the characters that they had in this movie, which is, I think, why Katie McGrath stood out so much in this movie to me, not just because I love her personally and her fashion, but also because she's like the only character that has like a clear personality in this movie, and it's evil and it's over the top, but still it's like I was excited to have a personality in this movie.
I will say that Katie McGrath did shine through with her acting performance, because she did seem to actually, I don't want to say like everybody else was kind of phoning it in, but Katie McGrath seemed like she was going for it. Even if it was chewing the scenery a little bit, she was actually like committed to what she was doing. So I will say that her performance, even if it was, kind of a small bit, she did objectively stand out, not just me as a Katie McGrath fan. Like she objectively did stand out. I will say in that moment with the church during the Christmas Eve service, when the daughter of the Browning family hears the knock on the church door, I thought that was actually well done, in the fact that I guess the guardian angel was knocking and she was the only one, like her guardian angel, I guess. We never see who that is. But somebody is knocking on that door and she's the only one who can hear it. And then she kind of stands up and there's like this slow motion shot as she goes towards the door. Some of that I did like. I thought that was actually pretty well done. So I'll give it that. Some of that, but when they get outside and they find Annabelle, they don't like bring her into the church. They just like keep her outside in the cold, and I'm like, you can put that coat on her all day, but she's still out in the cold and it's snowing.
I love that you just mentioned that, because Aaron in the chat says, can we talk about how when they found Buttons, they covered her with a coat rather than bring her into the warm church?
Yes. What were they doing? I get it. Like, it's better visually to have her like laying with the family on the front steps of the church. Like, that makes more sense. But if realistically, they should have taken her inside.
She just fell through the ice, man. You got to get her warm.
Well, it's like she was outside of a church, so the people inside are probably pretty charitable. So they were probably just, if we just leave her out here, keep her out here, and pretend to comfort her, maybe she won't make it and we won't have to adopt her. So
that's true. That would be such a Buttons move if she like survives. She survives the drowning in the cold, frozen water. She makes it all the way to the church and she dies of like, I don't know.
She's like,
some sort of
it looks so warm
disease
in there. And they're like, oh, I don't think you'd want to go in though.
Oh,
classic Buttons.
Classic Buttons. Daryl says in the chat that Katie McGrath is so attractive it's hard to root against her as a villain. I guess there's a case to be made with that viewpoint. So I think is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss about Buttons: A Christmas Tale? Anything that we didn't mention?
Dick Van Dyke, I swear, is going to be 174 years old. He's still going to be dancing and singing.
Good for him.
Good for him. I have to make a admission. So I fully did not think that Dick Van Dyke was with us still, and I'm so sorry. And I googled him just to be like, oh, when did we lose this titan
national
of industry?
Treasure, yeah.
And then I was like, oh no, we haven't. So good for him though. He's almost 97 now, which is wild.
And maybe there's something to that. Maybe the singing and the dancing has. Maybe that's the secret.
We literally just lost Angela Lansbury. I think she
was pretty old
a couple months ago. Yeah, she was in her 90s too. So maybe there's something to like the longevity of people who star in the movie Buttons. Katie McGrath's gonna live forever.
Dick Van Dyke Dyke has a really good book. I think it's called like Keep Moving or something like that. And it's really about like how he kind of keeps functioning as, a 40-year-old man in a 90-year-old man's body.
That's awesome.
Really interesting book, and gets into a little bit into his biography too, which is cool.
That is cool. Yeah, he's a legendary figure in the film industry and the musical industry as well. Given his
and the British accent industry.
Yes, the British accent industry. So, Dick Van Dyke. Yeah, there is something to be said about continuing to move, and exercise is very important. So there's some wisdom in that. Morgan, do you have any other thoughts you wanted to share about Buttons before we go to overall thoughts and wrap up?
Oh goodness, buttons. What is there to say about this movie? I questioned a lot of the choices in Buttons. The directing was a little weird too. I don't want to like pile on,
but it was a Tim Janis film.
It wasn't. I mean, in typical Tim Janis fashion. No, but there were some shots that were like off center.
Yes,
and there were some times when the sound mix was actually bad. Like somebody sounded like was in. So like let's say somebody was in the foreground and the person in the background sounded like they were escaping a wind tunnel. Yeah, they weren't mic'd, and I was like, what's happening here exactly in this film?
Okay, so that wasn't just like my TV or my sound. Okay,
I felt bad like bringing it up, but it was a little jarring. I was like,
and it happened multiple times.
Okay, thank God it wasn't just. I thought it was just me. I was like, is this happening?
And it happened in the same situation.
It sounded like mush-mouthed a lot too.
Yeah.
Like the audio sounded mush-mouthed. Yeah.
Yeah, multiple instances I can remember, it was the same kind of situation where like a main character would be like seated at a table talking, and they would be mic'd properly, but the lady in the kitchen would come out to bring something, and she would say a line, but she was not mic'd. That was a very similar situation that kept recurring. So I did take note of that. So maybe that's Tim Janis. This was his directorial debut. Maybe he's learned he's picked up some new skills since then. Maybe he's met some new audio people.
Yeah,
made new contacts and relationships.
Knowing that some of this or like most of this was going to charity, I do wonder if like maybe people were volunteering to like
they may have had a smaller budget. I wonder if that budget is listed anywhere.
I would
or they worked for scale or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, don't worry about it. Listen, I got like 5 mics here, that'll be good enough.
Now I'm actually curious about the budget. If
we don't got to mic Jane Seymour, she's fine. She's just standing in the background.
Let's see. If anybody can find the budget for that. It used to, IMDb is not as easy to look up these kinds of things.
No, it really
anymore.
isn't. Usually it used to be kind of like easy to look up.
Sometimes they'll show that on Box
Oh my God,
Office
was
and
this?
Mojo.
So again, I'm on Buttons, A Christmas Tales Wikipedia, and I don't know if this is correct, but according to Wikipedia, this somehow was Angela Lansbury's final film role.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's fitting that she goes out as a guardian angel.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
And she got to act with Dick Van Dyke. It was a really good cast. So
did they ever done anything together before? I can't remember.
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know. They both have such deep like filmographies.
Mm-hmm.
I would be surprised if they hadn't done something at some point together.
Yeah, because they were both working for Disney around. Because didn't Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks come out within like the same like 5-year span? So they were around the Disney line together. Yeah,
probably Bedknobs and Broomsticks, one of my all-time favorite movies. Just putting that out there. Yeah. So I could not find a budget for Buttons.
Yeah, I can't find it either, and I'm Googling, but nothing is coming up on Google.
I haven't looked, but I also haven't found it. So.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you for the report.
I found something that was like thenumbers.com, and I was like, oh, cool. And there was like full financials, and there's like nothing.
Maybe they just did not want to disclose that. So
they're like, listen, Buttons was a triumph. Don't ask me more questions.
But like, that makes me wonder what the budget was though, because they had all these big name stars. Did they not pay them? Did
I
all the
wonder if
budget go to paying the actors?
I think maybe they were like, "Hey, this is for charity. Like, would you sit on a chair and tell a little girl a story?" And Angela Lansbury's like, "Sure."
Well, based on what I know about the union stuff, like basically they'd have to at least pay them scale, which I think for a production like that is somewhere between $300 or $400 a day.
Okay.
So I mean, that's practically working for free if you're an Angela Lansbury
or a Jane
Dick Van
Seymour.
Dyke. Yeah,
Yes.
or Jane Seymour, like
Yes.
or obviously a Katie McGrath.
Okay. Well, I guess that will wrap up our thoughts on Buttons, A Christmas Tale. That's the title we're going with. It is a Christmas tale, so if you're in the Christmas mood, it is a Christmas movie in part. So you could watch it if you wanted a story that has a happy ending, but
Eventually.
it takes a while to get there. But it does have a happy ending for a Christmas movie if you are into that kind of thing. So I guess that's gonna wrap up this Supergirl Radio Christmas. Oh yes.
It also had Angela Lansbury basically saying that adulthood equals the death of hope. She had like this little monologue that basically said, you know, when you grow up, you can't hope anymore.
So true.
Message, so.
All right, that's how we're gonna end this movie review.
Yes.
I think that is appropriate. All right. I guess Morgan, we have some listener feedback. Would you like to start us off?
Sure. So we have an email from a listener who goes by no name, mysterious, who sent us feedback about For the Girl Who Has Everything, writing, "Hi, Supergirl Radio. This is probably my favorite or second favorite episode of season 1, so I had to write in. My only true complaint, other than sadness that Asher was killed off, is that we didn't spend more time on Krypton. It's such an integral part of who Kara is as a person and character, and what truly sets her apart from Clark, since she actually remembers all that she lost. And I wish we could have seen more of it. We kind of just skipped from Kara being sucked in by fake Kal-El, then she's laughing with her parents right at home in the dream. I wish we'd seen more about how she got there, seen more of her day-to-day on Krypton. It sounded like they made her an adjudicator rather than a scientist, and I would have loved to see that, plus more interactions with her mom. Also, just more of Krypton's culture. Come on, season 1 writers, you could have done it right. We know how important Kara's Kryptonian family is, and that she and Asher were close. And I just wish we'd dive deeper into this what could have been verse. So yeah, not nearly enough time spent on Krypton. They should have trimmed more of the side plots. They go on to say, I know it's too early for boardroom or ballroom. First off, never too early. They say, I need to point out that Kara's dress when she was on Photon, which is like faux Krypton, which I love, was one of my favorites. Elegant and lovely, and just unusual enough to make you think maybe not typical Earthwear. Where was this style of dress on Argo? Post-explosion, did they just make the decision? Never again shall we be constricted by even semi-formal clothing. From this day forth, we shall don only loungewear and commune clothes. Listen, you're judging it, but they're so breezy. They go on to say, except for Allura, her dress resembled actual clothing and not cult garb. No wonder the gazebos were having problems. You can't be in the right gazebo building mindset in loungewear. That's not for work. That's for relaxation. Also, Kara's Krypton hair, gorgeous. I don't remember ever seeing it curled like that again, but I loved it.
So we don't know if because I think the email is referring to the white dress that Kara wears on Photon. Is that what you got out of that?
I think so. Yeah.
So we do know what that white dress was. It was the medical gown. On Krypton.
Mean, their fashion was just like out of control, if that's what the medical gowns look like.
So maybe they did have that on Argo. We just didn't see anybody in the hospital.
Oh, maybe they're like, listen, all day, every day, we're in loungewear. We're swishing around. Everything's breezy. Slankets everywhere. You go to the hospital and you better come correct. You better not show up to your surgeon.
Species, slankets are an evolved piece of clothing. So
listen, I'm on the same page as Argo. That sounds wonderful.
They all wear like black tie attire when they go to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. Honey, do you have your tucks and tails? You got to get to the hospital now.
Yeah, so that's a good email about the Kryptonian culture, and I would agree. Kara's hair, and for the girl who has everything, A+. I liked it in season 1 because they would curl her hair quite frequently, and then by like season 5, they were like, "Forget it, we're too tired. We can't."
They're like, you know what, Melissa, you look good and everything. She's like, could I get a little fancy? They're like, shh, nah.
We'll just do the bangs, and that's kind of the bare minimum. You don't need curls with the bangs. That's too much. So I would agree about all of that. Well, we also finally got an answer to my question about Taylor Swift's use of snakes on her Reputation tour. That has come up quite a bit on Supergirl Radio. We are sometimes referred to as Taylor Swift Radio here on the podcast. According to Twitter user, and forgive me, I'm just going to spell this out because I will probably mispronounce it, at ZHIUEDHYV, Taylor Swift has said in interviews at the time of the Reputation tour that it was in relation to someone calling her a snake on social media, and it caught on. So this listener has also sent us a link to a Pop Buzz article that goes into detail about this. So we've linked to that article in our live stream video description, and we'll put it in the audio podcast show notes if you want to check that out as well. So I guess she was just taking that criticism somebody threw at her and just said, fine, all snakes, all around the floor. We're just going to do snakes everywhere.
Oh, you think I'm a snake? I'll be a snake. And she's like, snakes everywhere.
So thank you for that answer. That really, I can rest easy now that I have that answer. So I appreciate that.
Mystery solved. So Courtney wrote in about holiday-themed Supergirl cast content, writing, I'm a bit behind, but in your Hostile Takeover episode, you asked if the cast were in any scary movies. Technically, it's not a movie, but Katie McGrath was in the first season of some horror show called Slasher. I think it's still on Netflix. It's been a while since I saw it, but towards the end, it gets really ridiculous. But she is the main character, so the whole season revolves around her. And I think another major character in the show was in season 4 of Supergirl as that one guy who led James to the Children of Liberty when they tricked Guardian into almost destroying some monument that had Supergirl locked in without her powers.
Boy, season
4 was a whole journey, wasn't it?
There were some things going on there.
Now,
have you seen Slasher?
Of course I have. Of course I have. It's Katie McGrath. It's spooky. It's a slasher. So of course, I watched the first season before Katie McGrath. I thought, this is insane, but I enjoyed it. They're right. As it went along, it got like crazier and crazier. So I think I watched that like last year or the year before. And this year I was like, oh, let me try season 2. It's like anthology formatted. I just couldn't really get into season 2.
Was there no Katie McGrath?
There was no Katie. There was no Katie in season 2, and so I'm starting to think maybe that could have been a reason why there needed to be more Katie content in my slasher shows.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. I've now heard several people tell me about Slasher, so
it's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, like I think the premise is that like her mom was killed on Halloween.
Ooh.
and when she was like a baby or about to give birth or something, and they're like, now Katie's coming back. She's coming back to town to like get the house, take care of a house or something. If I remember right, that was sort of the premise. And then of course the murders begin again. So and then everybody starts getting murdered. So it's just like people being murdered left and right.
So it's sort of like Scream.
It's very Scream-esque, yeah. Like very classic slasher. She's like very much the final girl, and she's like, oh no, who got murdered now?
Okay, all right, I'm gonna check it out. I don't really do the horror movies and the spooky stuff anymore, but I might check it out for Katie McGrath, see what's going on.
She's great.
Well, that's good to know. Well, shall we do some snap judgments, Bill? Do you have some time for some snap judgments?
Yeah, I can snap.
All right, let's do it. In the game of snap judgments, each person is presented with 2 options, but must only choose one. First instincts are recommended, and explanations are unnecessary.
Okay, so our first snap judgment is hot chocolate or peppermint tea.
Bill, what is your choice?
I got to go with hot chocolate, mainly because I'm not allowed to drink a lot of tea anymore for reasons I won't get into because it's a family show.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I try to drink tea because I know it's healthier, but man, I love hot chocolate, so I'm going hot chocolate on that one.
I gotta go hot chalky on this one. It's a classic for a reason. Peppermint tea sounds delightful, but also is it full caffeinated? I can't drink that at night, or I'll be like shaking.
Yeah,
I can drink hot chocolate anytime.
I could go for some peppermint like flavored hot chocolate though.
Oh, that would be a good combination.
Like a thin in a cup.
See, I used to be obsessed with like Dunkin' Donuts had like a mint hot chocolate. And I used to get it all the time. This year, I went to go get my mint hot chocolate. I was all ready. I was excited. They're not doing it anymore. And I was like, excuse me, sir, how dare you? I'm going to like write to the president of Dunkin' Donuts.
You should.
Straight to the top I'm going.
Let your voice be heard.
They were good, man. They made a mistake.
That is disappointing. I guess the peppermint got too expensive or something and they couldn't.
Big peppermint getting in our way again. Okay, better cameo. Roma Downey as Mother Genevieve or Jane Seymour as Mrs. Browning.
If you don't recall, Roma Downey was on Touched by an Angel. She was she was one of the main angels on the show. You wouldn't recognize her in Buttons. Because she wears a nun's habit, but
and she wasn't touching people. So.
She wasn't touching. She was not an angel in this, and she was not touching people. So,
I mean, there were angels in this, so the irony abounds. Really,
there were angels had already been covered. We didn't need another angel in this one. So, Bill, what is your choice here?
I think I'm gonna have to go with Jane Seymour, just because it's like you have to pick people that you've at least met, right? If you have an option between someone you've met and someone you haven't, you have to pick the person you've met. So I'm going to pick Jane Seymour. I got to meet her back in 2005. I was being a paid seat filler at a Johnny Cash tribute concert out here in Los Angeles.
That's awesome.
And I got to hang out on the side of the stage with her for about 2-3 minutes. So
that's
cool.
Jane. Do you remember, did you talk to her? Do you remember what you talked about?
Yeah, well, Dave Grohl and Chris Christopherson were on stage playing, and we were talking a bit about them. Aren't they great? They've never played together, but they sound awesome together. That sort of thing. So.
Amazing.
That's so cool.
Thank you for sharing your Jane Seymour experience.
I will name drop all day.
Love me some Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
So good.
I have a soft spot for Roma Downey. Because there's a specific memory in my life where I remember watching Touched by an Angel with my grandfather, my brother, my mother, and me. Everyone in the room was crying because Touched by an Angel its main goal for it to exist was that it would make you cry by the end of the episode. And so Touched by an Angel, I could never make it out of an episode of that show and not cry. So I guess for that experience, for that memory that I have, I guess I'm going to go Roma Downey.
I didn't even notice Roma. Poor Roma. I'm sorry. But I didn't even notice that she was in it. But Jane Seymour was the moment watching this movie where I went, well, how are you in this? Also, it's insane that Jane Seymour looks the way she does at her age. God bless Jane Seymour.
She's looking great.
She's such a hot lady. Just for that alone, I gotta give it to Jane. Also, she adopted all those orphans. What did Roma do?
Yeah, Jane Seymour really fit into that time period, whatever that time period was that we determined. Because it had a little bit of a Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman kind of time period. But it's a nebulous time period, so we don't really know. But
it could have been whenever.
Yeah, she looked like she fit in really well.
They have a car, but they don't have electricity. What's going on?
Yeah, I know. Nothing makes sense. Okay, for our last one, and this is a very important question, a very personal, revealing question. Who would you rather have as a guardian angel, Dick Van Dyke or Angela Lansbury?
Bill, what's your answer?
Tough one.
I am going to have to go with Dick Van Dyke. It's not that I don't like Angela Lansbury. It's just that I love Dick Van Dyke.
I heard you say I hate Angela Lansbury.
Bill's on record.
I was trying to throw people off the scent. Thanks for exposing me here. No, Angela Lansbury's fine, but Dick Van Dyke, I don't know. He's a titan. Like the old Dick Van Dyke Show, one of my favorite sitcoms of all time, kind of influenced who I am as a comedian in a lot of ways. And Angela Lansbury, she did Bed Knobs and Broomsticks and Murder, She Wrote, which I never watched. So.
Murder, She Wrote. What is that town that's in Murder, She Wrote? Is that Cabot Cove? I always get Cabot Cove and Bodega Bay mixed up, the two fictional places. Cabot Cove is like the murder capital of the world.
Oh, yeah,
People are getting murdered all the time in that little town. Like, what are they doing down there?
Jessica was always busy, that's for sure.
She always had a case to solve. For a long time, she did. Yeah, I think for me, I love Dick Van Dyke. He's so great. But Dick Van Dyke would probably make me sing and dance. And
for sure.
I don't know that I'm into that. I don't think I would be able to compete with somebody like Little Annabelle. So I find the Angela Lansbury aspect of it a little more appealing because she would just serve you hot chocolate and read you a story. And that seems way better, like a chiller time. So I think I'm going to go with Angela Lansbury.
What did the little girl have, though? Did she have, like, scarlet fever? Is it really a good idea to be pumping someone full of sugar that's that sick?
Probably not.
So if you're in that situation, you're probably a sick little child laying in a hospital bed for orphans. But I think that seems like a more relaxing time. I wouldn't be required to do a song and dance.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is a tough one because I love them both. But I do feel like I think Rebecca's right. Dick Van Dyke would certainly have you up singing, dancing. Sounds tiring. Meanwhile, my girl Angela, we have a lot of things in common, I think. Like we both like sitting. So there's that. We both like reading. And then like I feel like we could talk about murders all day. She's got so many murders that she solved. And I'd be like, tell me all about that one. And it was the husband? Shocking.
She's the original true crime fanatic.
Right? She's original. If Jessica could have back in the day, I think she would have had a podcast and she would have been a big deal. So I feel like just for that, like me and my guardian angel just sitting around drinking hot chockies talking about true crime, I don't know what's better than that for me.
No judgments on your snap judgments. All right, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say a fun Angela Lansbury fact because she did pass away a couple of months ago, I believe, and I
was
very fun.
That's an extremely fun fact is that she's dead. No, but I watched this like New York Times package about her. And I did not realize that she was in the movie Gaslight, like where the term gaslight comes from.
Yeah.
Like, that's how old she was. She was in like this movie. She was really young in the movie, but she was in that movie. And I was like, oh my God. It was unbelievable when they started going through all these movies that she was in, like these big movies from like back in the day, the 30s and the 40s and even the 50s. And I was like, whoa, it's just unbelievable the career that she had.
Yeah, it spanned decades. Upon decades.
Morgan, I think you're wrong. She wasn't in Gaslight at all.
Are you gaslighting me, sir? How dare you? Well played.
Yeah, she's been in some really great classic films. If you've never seen Angela Lansbury when she's in her younger years, it's quite fun to go back to some of those.
Oh, I just pulled up Daryl's comment, but he says she was also in Sweeney Todd.
I did not know this.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a classic. There's a tape version of it they used to air on PBS. You can probably find it online.
Oh, so she's not in the Tim Burton version.
No, she was famously in the stage version.
Oh man, I would have given anything for her to been in that Tim Burton movie with
Right.
Helena Bonham Carter.
That would have been wild.
Dang it. But I'll have to check that out. Very, very interesting. Well, I guess now that we've gotten through snap judgments, we need to get to some Supergirl Radio and DC TV podcast plugs. And this time around, we're going to debut Joe's award-winning contest submission. We've already been playing Brian's, so Joe's going to take it for us this week. If you would like to contact Supergirl Radio, you can post a comment on our website at supergirlradio.com. You can email us at supergirlradio@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 678-718-7252. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all at Supergirl Radio. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Podchaser, and Spotify, where we also have a Spotify playlist that includes music featured on and inspired by the CW Supergirl TV series. We are listed on DC's fan page, which you can find at dccomics.com/DC-fans. If you like what we do, we encourage you to give us a rating and write us a review on Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our Supergirl Radio live streams, make sure to subscribe to the DC TV Podcast YouTube channel and hit that notification bell to get notified when we go live and wired. DC TV Podcast also has a TeePublic store, so if you're in need of new DC TV related t-shirts, tank tops, sweatshirts, onesies, mugs, notebooks, pillows, or stickers, go to supergirlradio.com and click on the TeePublic store link at the top of the page.
Now see here, Supergirl Radio is part of the DC TV Podcast Network, so if you want to listen to other shows, we've got The Flash Podcast, Legends of Tomorrow Podcast, The Lituation Room, DC on HBO Max Podcast, Stargirl Podcast, Superman and Lois Radio, Green Lantern Podcast, The Sandman Podcast, DC TV After Dark, and Justice League Dark Podcast.
Morgan, would you like to talk about the TeePublic?
I would absolutely love to do that. I was just so into the new plugs that I forgot where I was in the doc.
Oh, and I actually need to change things in the docs. Basically, we're going to be promoting Katie McGrath merch.
Well, since we talked about the fine cinematic masterpiece Buttons, A Christmas Tale, if that is your preferred title, starring our Katie McGrath, we have tons of Katie McGrath and Lena Luthor designs in the DC TV TeePublic store.
Yeah, so if you have a Katie McGrath fan in your life, or you are the Katie McGrath fan, we have lots
in your own life.
In your own life, we have lots of Lena Luthor and a Katie McGrath merchandise in the DC TV Podcast TeePublic store if you'd like to check it out. And we recommend that you do. We got some cool stuff in there. Also, we would like to thank our Legion of Super Sponsors. These people are Michael, Sam, Anne Marie, Yvonne, Nicola, Leslie, Abby, Irmgard, Miriam, Nicole, Faith, Brian, Ethan, Danny, and Tara. If you'd like to become a Legion of a Super Sponsor, we have 4 monthly memberships that you can choose from, and we appreciate everyone's support. We've been doing some fun Patreon exclusives, including talking about the Val Season 2. We probably should do a follow-up on that because Morgan actually watched the Val Season 2. I
binged it very quickly. I'm not sure if I would recommend that. I'm just like walking around looking at people, kind of funny now.
We also pitched stories about Alfred Pennyworth.
Did.
It was pretty fun. We need to workshop that into an actual outline or comic book script.
It's gonna be great, though. Really.
I think we got some good story ideas for Alfred Pennyworth. Well, I guess that leads us to our personal plugs. Bill, where can our listeners and our viewers find you on the internet?
Thanks, Rebecca. If people want to check it out, I've been doing, for the past few months, I've been doing a new podcast called Where I'm From, which is a podcast where I talk to people about where they're from. I've talked to people that your listeners know, like Rebecca, and Stephen Tobolowsky from Groundhog Day, and Stephen Page from the Bare Naked Ladies, and Beekman from Beekman's World, and a whole bunch of other people. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, you can check it out at billmeeks.com/whereimfrom. It has links to find the podcast, the YouTube live stream, the YouTube edited version with B-roll and context and all that stuff. And, just keep an eye out on my Twitter, @BillMeeks, and I'll let you know when I'm going to go live with it.
Yeah, we've got all of Bill's links in the live stream video description below if you want to check it out while you're watching the live stream. And we'll also have it in the audio podcast show notes. I've been telling people on Supergirl Radio that Bill had all these famous people, and then he was like, "Hey, Rebecca, you should come on the podcast." And I was like, "Why? I'm not famous."
Perhaps the most famous of all.
I know, I was like,
I had to build up.
Oh,
you
sure.
you did, yeah. They were like, "I'm finally the audience is ready to drop the big one."
But yeah, I had fun talking about Birmingham, Alabama with Bill, and maybe sometime, Bill, if you make it back down this way, I'll take you to some of those restaurants I told you about because they're pretty good.
Excellent. I'm going to make sure Morgan has said she'd be down to come on. I haven't booked her yet. In the new year, Morgan, for sure.
Awesome. I represent the East Coast over here.
I would be into listening to that. I think that would just be another notch on your famous people belt.
Of course. The audience is ready in 2023, Bill, I think, finally.
Hey, to be clear, it would be a lateral notch from Rebecca.
Of course.
No, I think there's a higher class that comes with Morgan getting on your podcast. So that's awesome. Well, I look forward to that. Well, if you want to keep up with me, you can follow me on the social media platform Vero, which I enjoy quite a bit. You would know that I've recently watched Buttons because I told you about it on Vero. You can follow me there at Derby Kid. I'm also on Instagram at the Derby Kid. And you can check me out on my personal YouTube channel at youtube.com/duckmilkprod. I'm still going through the top critics of Rotten Tomatoes and their Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice reviews. I really feel like I'm close to the end. I don't know what number I'm on yet, but it's getting there. Hopefully,
making
I can
your way
finish.
Through.
Boy, it's been a long time that I've been doing these
journey.
things. It really has. And they don't do a spell check on the reviews, and they spell Luther with an E, and it's getting to the point where I'm getting real tired of it. At least the bare minimum, do a spell check before you publish something. So you can check me out on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. I'll do a live stream there where we actually verbatim read through the review. So I'm not making anything up, and you can read it with me. So that's what I do over on my personal YouTube channel. So you can subscribe there and check it out.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Mojotastic. And you can also find me on DC TV After Dark and the Legends of Tomorrow podcast. So we just dropped an episode all about social media where we're like, what's the deal with social media? You would think asking that question, we'd have answers. We don't, but we just kind of talk about it. Like, what is the deal with social media? What's going on? A lot of good things to ponder. And then obviously this month we're gonna do some of our own Christmas movie watching. So we are going to be watching a classic Christmas movie, a cheesy Christmas movie, and a Christmas movie starring the Legends cast for our Patreon supporters. So pray for me. It's a lot of Christmas movies, and there's so many Christmas movies. Although the one that won a classic Christmas movie is The Muppets Christmas Carol.
Oh,
so
that's a good one.
A classic of the form, really.
That is a really, really good one.
Just
so
make sure you watch the fixed version with the Love Is Gone put back in, because that's very important. It's a turning point.
It is a turn. I agree. I think they're releasing on Disney Plus like the full version, like the with all that and that song back in. So we're gonna experience it how it's meant to be experienced.
Excellent.
It's a great film. A great take on Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I think it might be my second favorite though, because I do love Bill Murray in Scrooge.
Oh, Scrooged is great.
Scrooge is like my number one take on A Christmas Carol. I think I prefer that one because I used to work in television, and like Bill Murray's character is like a TV executive, and so some of that feels very familiar. But
feels
like
correct to you.
But the Muppets are like right there.
It's great because Michael Caine plays the movie so straight and so serious, so committed, and all of his co-stars are Muppets, and it's absolutely fantastic. One of the best performances of his career, I think.
Yeah, that's what really sells it. I think is his commitment to Ebenezer Scrooge.
It really does.
Sam Eagle has a great appearance in that as Ebenezer Scrooge's.
Oh yeah, that's
he's
right.
like his teacher in his flash. It's perfect. It's perfect.
I was always disappointed that they never brought back the puppet for the Ghost of Christmas Present. I think the big
yes.
Oh yeah, I love
Jolly
him.
Guy.
They never brought that puppet back for anything. It's a shame.
That was a great puppet.
He can serve another purpose outside of a Dickens Christmas Carol. I'm sure they can find a place for him. But yeah, so that's an excellent selection. I look forward to hearing the legendary ladies discuss that. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio, the final one of 2022, not the final one of ever.
No,
just
we'll be back in
this
2023.
Year. We'll be back next year.
2022 is the last year ever.
Well,
if the world ends December 30th, 2022, then I guess
then we should have like, scheduled a little differently. We would have scheduled differently.
I feel good knowing that if this was the last episode of Supergirl,
we're going out on buttons. It feels correct, right?
I feel good about it. I feel like it felt right.
This is us at the top of our game, let's be honest.
Well, this feels like a good time to bring up Aaron's comment from the chat, who said, I rented this movie because I've never seen it and was disappointed, but tonight's episode of Supergirl Radio is making it worse now. So, you know what, Aaron, I think if this was the last episode of Supergirl Radio, I think Aaron's going to be good with it. I think we're going to be good with it.
Aaron's fine with it, so why wouldn't we?
So, but we will be back in 2023. So, no, there is more Supergirl Radio coming. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Supergirl Radio. But until next time, I'm still Rebecca Johnson.
And I'm still Morgan Glennon. And we hope you have a Christmas tale of your own this holiday season.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy.
Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it? Is becoming a human burrito a plus or a minus? I don't know. It does seem snug.
I mean, they say you are what you eat.
Kira.
I love that.
So I do a podcast called Supergirl Radio, and one of our segments is Lena Luthor, Boardroom or Ballroom, because her outfit.
She looks like a boss in this coat.
Nasty Luthor like a different Luthor? It's not just Lena being mean?
No.
Helen Slater here. So fun to know that you're hosting a podcast called Supergirl Radio.